Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate your time and the opportunity to present SB 457. To commence, I would ask that the committee members dismiss and do not pay attention to the staff analysis, but rather simply listen to the testimony today. You know me as one very fastidious about rules and courtesies that are extended. In all my years, I've never seen such a biased committee rule or committee statement here. The argument in support was allowed 2 sentences which only referred to what the provisions of the bill were, not even arguments. And when our staff tried to submit arguments, they were rebuffed. The arguments in opposition are 9 paragraphs. That is not a fair, balanced, or unbiased committee analysis on a bill. So I'd ask the committee to consider the testimony.
Let's hear your testimony, sir.
Okay. 2 years ago, the legislature passed AB 1213, the Bobcat Protection Act. It prohibited commercial trapping in the Joshua Tree National Monument and delegated to the Fish and Game Commission the authority to ban bobcat tracking around biological preserves, state conservancies, other private and public wildlife areas. The code authorized the commission to define these boundaries in areas where bobcat trapping would be banned, quote, using readily identifiable features such as highways or other major roads. My interpretation always of such as means as an example, which can include that highway, but can also include other options. The Fish and Game Commission's holding public hearings on the boundaries now. The conversations that we're privy to at these hearings clearly reveals that the Fish and Game Commission feels constrained about using major highways and roads as the only designation. And it's concerned about not being able to utilize readily identifiable features that are boundary proposals. Now, not applying that additional language, readily identifiable features, if they're not taken into account, that'll ban trapping in nearly 60% of California. And I would say there's no good cause to totally ban in 60% of California for this particular species. The term other major roads is subjective and it is open to interpretation, and no one more than I would be familiar with that, being a longtime resident of rural areas and representing 19 different counties in California. I know what kind of roads we have out there in the habitat of the bobcat. And they're everything from almost cattle trails that you can get a one-wheeler or a two-wheeler up and down, or four-wheeler up and down on, to, you know, at least paved roads in some cases, or gravel, but mostly only dirt. So it is incredibly subjective to just say other major roads. Certainly what is a major road in a rural area is not equivalent to what a major road would be in an urban area. This bill clarifies that such as in statute to include the list of items suggested that the Fish and Game Commission consider while delineating these boundaries. These are consistent with already established practices. They are including, but not limited to, landmarks, navigation and surveying technologies such as GPS, which is widely applied and used now, or other methods of establishing geographic positions currently used at the Commission and as seen in marine protected areas. As to the issue of the bill being premature, I would argue it isn't. It's simply clarifying existing law. And I infer and intuit that the Commission would welcome such clarity as they're commencing their regulatory process. There seems to be confusion on the part of the Commission over the methods allowed by the statute for establishing the no bobcat trapping area boundaries. AB 1213 clearly provides for methodologies other than the use of highways, as I said, getting back to the such as. The department and the commission are not considering other methods. This would provide clarification relative to other methodologies that can be used that help establish sound, reasonable, rational regulations for the future that will be helpful in managing a species. Like highways or other major roads, any road appears on a map. Landmarks and GPS waypoints are readily identifiable features. Section 4155B3 doesn't limit readily identifiable features to just highways and other major roads, as I've expressed twice thus far. There aren't any legitimate enforcement issues that would preclude the use of GPS technology. Waypoints are easily understood and expressed in terms of latitude and longitude, and both for terrestrial and for marine locations, as I'll get to in a minute, already in practice. To enforce the existing law, wardens have to leave the highways or major roads almost always. They walk, they ride, they have other vehicles that they use to determine if anybody is engaged in illegal activities, including trapping in prohibited areas that cannot be viewed simply from roadways. I've seen these wardens, and I've been out on the line with them, traversing these rural areas. GPS technology is well established, easily to use. The use of any road appearing on maps as a boundary would be effective, but it's not necessary for enforcement purposes, I would argue. Roads should not be used exclusively. We should utilize all techniques or more techniques, and GPS is one of the most reliable. Almost anyone can understand and use today GPS. In other words, to trappers, it would be easy and very quickly clear to them that they were in an area that should not be trapped. GPS uses satellites, as we well know. We have them on our cars, use them all the time. It's a practical means commonly practiced by all of us today, or almost all of us. It's further increased by new existing satellite technology that's being used. In fact, the State Fish and Game Commission already has adopted GPS waypoints for determining boundaries of marine protected areas since before 2007 in the Channel Islands, and has restated its support for the use of GPS at least 4 times since the adoption of the central, northern, southern, and far northern marine protected areas, already then in practice, an option that should be considered. Fishermen use GPS to identify locations for them, to guide them when they are in marine protected area boundaries. U.S. Department of the Interior Bureau of Land Management has at least since April 1, 2004 supported the use of GPS technology as a valid means of determining the location and for drawing maps. Again, common practice now. Recent conversation with the Fish and Game Commission staff indicated the clarification by 457 would be helpful in establishing these boundaries, and that this bill would help them facilitate enforcement. Its attempt to bring the commission into the 21st century. Use of a landmark with an appropriate buffer distance based upon science is contrary to the purpose of the original bill. A landmark is merely to establish a location. It has no bearing on a boundary or buffer zone around a boundary unless so designated for that purpose by the Commission in their regulation. In fact, the use of landmark was provided in 1213 in the Fish and Game Code under the broad term, and we have expressed this already, readily identifiable features. If the Commission elects to use a landmark, it can establish appropriate buffer zone if it deems one to be desirable. Most roadways and other heavily traveled highways, some major roads, don't serve as a significant barrier to bobcat mobility. Bobcats are most active at night when traversing the bobcat habitat is less traveled, less hazardous, and less of a barrier to bobcat movements. Most of these roads, as I've said, are in rural areas. This bill 457 simply clarifies the tools the commission can use while drawing boundaries. Tools that are already well established, well used, well settled. It does not mandate the use of one over another. I hope the commission could use these tools to tighten the boundaries of the prohibited zones. They may choose not to if they desire. This simply opens the options. If I may, Madam Chair, we have two witnesses
Yes,
to testify.
absolutely.
Bob
Who's
Williams.
first? Yes. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I'm Tama County Supervisor Bob Williams. I represent District 4 in Tama County. And my job as a county supervisor, I represent southwestern Tehama County. It's an area of over 500,000 acres, but only 12,700 people. That defines rural. We only have in my district one highway, and what we consider a major road is often open for debate for our more urbanized visitors to our area. As Senator Nielsen has stated, current law authorizes the Fish and Game Commission to outline the borders of an area where bobcat trapping is prohibited using readily identifiable features such as highways or other major roads. Senate Bill 457 provides clarification relative to the methodologies that may be used for this purpose and could thus help to establish sound, rational regulations in the future. Like highways and other major roads, any road that appears on a map, landmarks, and with today's technology, GPS waypoints are all readily identifiable features. The Senator has stated already that Fish and Game Code Section 4155B3 does not limit readily identifiable features to just highways and other major roads. Furthermore, the term other major roads is subjective and open to interpretation. And like I said, what is considered a major road in a rural area may not be considered a major road in an urban setting. But unfortunately, there seems to be some confusion as to what constitutes a major road among the Fish and Game Commission, which is in the process of holding public hearings on the boundaries. The conversations at these hearings clearly reveal that the Commission is only considering major highways and roads while drawing boundaries. Now, this brought up a question in my mind as to the boundaries that are being proposed for this regulation, whereas I've been a farmer and rancher all my life and an outdoorsman all my life, and I'm very familiar with hunting codes and hunting zones. And the hunting zones in the state of California don't just use major highways and roads. The consequences of not identifying and applying either readily identifiable features are boundary proposals, as the Senator said, that ban trapping in nearly 60% of California. And the effects in rural areas of the state, including Tehama County, would have bifurcated trapping regulations under the current proposal. One part of the county is going to be able to trap, another part of the county is not. I urge your support of Senate Bill 457 in order to give the Fish and Game Commission clarification as they draw their trapping boundaries. And again, thank you for hearing me today, and I'd be open to any questions that any of the members have. Thank you.
Thank you. And there is a question from Senator Allen.
Good question. When you say that
Supervisor.
it's going to lead to bifurcated rules, that has to do with the way that the roads are in Tehama County? Is that there's a certain area where there's major roads and there's another area where there's not?
Yes, yes. We have on the east side of Tehama County is Highway 99E, cuts over across the Sacramento River, comes back down the other side on 99W. Interstate 5 intersects the county. And what I've seen on the current maps, that makes a loop up into the county.
So you're saying it's a little arbitrary to do it?
Right. Yeah. My thinking would be you have existing hunting zones that Fish and Game uses for deer hunting, and those are not used. Those don't use just major highways. What we consider a major highway in my district is the M4 Forest Service Road that goes from Corning, or goes from past Kenna clear over to Covelo and Mendocino County. That's a major road, but it's a dirt road.
It's a different code. Different regulations.
But it's the only road.
All right. Your next witness. Welcome.
Good morning. Noelle Kramers with the California Farm Bureau Federation. This is a complex and emotional topic. And I know that On more than one occasion, bills have been introduced to undo what was recently passed by the legislature. I would say that this bill absolutely does not fit into that category. The issue of bobcat trapping has been on every agenda of the Fish and Game Commission. They are working hard to implement AB 1213, but they have been challenged with implementing that because of the way 1213 was drafted. At the February commission meeting, one of the commissioners implored upon Assemblymember Bloom's staff, please send us legislation that is clear and easy to implement. And I would say that SB 457 helps implement what Assemblymember Bloom started. I think it adds some clarity and simplifies the job for the department and the commission. The reason I am here today is because California's farmers and ranchers are impacted by bobcats. Bobcats do kill lambs and chickens. Assemblymember Bloom recognized that and included an allowance for trapping to protect livestock and property. The challenge is if trapping ends up being banned because it is so difficult to implement Assemblymember Bloom's bill, we lose trappers that are available to provide that service to our members. And it's not just protecting livestock. There was a condor that was killed by bobcats last year. So we use trappers to protect endangered species as well. I think this bill will provide a real value to help implement the goals of Assemblymember Bloom's bill, which was simply to create buffer zones around the state's protected areas, and this simplifies that job. And I would ask for your aye vote today. Thank you.
All right. And any other people wishing to testify in support of this measure by adding their name and affiliation for the record?